Amid the crush of rush hour, a black woman collapses on the sidewalk. Bystanders step back, until a 9-year-old orphan runs in, lifts her up, and offers his last piece of bread. Moved by his kindness, she takes him in, working extra night shifts so her gambling husband will let the boy stay. She can't know that the child she saved today will one day save her from a brutal marriage forever. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thought. The late afternoon sun blazed over Henderson Street as Angela Johnson stumbled along the cracked sidewalk. Her vision blurred, her legs trembling after a grueling double shift at the factory. At 35, her body felt decades older, worn down by long hours and little rest. Her knees buckled. Angela collapsed onto the scorching pavement, her cheek pressed against the concrete. Around her, footsteps hurried past, people averting their eyes from just another black woman down on her luck. No one stopped, no one cared. Then small hesitant hands touched her shoulder. "Ma'am? Ma'am, please wake up." Through her fading consciousness, Angela saw a boy kneeling beside her. He couldn't have been more than 9, with hollow cheeks, matted hair, and clothes hanging off his thin frame. His bare feet were caked with dirt, but his eyes held a tenderness that pierced through her haze. "I'm okay," Angela whispered, though her parched throat made the words barely audible. The boy looked around frantically, then darted away. Angela closed her eyes, thinking he'd left like everyone else. But within moments he returned, slightly breathless. "Here, ma'am." He pressed a plastic water bottle into her trembling hands, half full and warm. "Please drink." Slowly. The tepid water was life itself. Angela drank deeply, feeling strength seep back into her limbs. When she finally looked up at the boy, she noticed everything: the dirt under his fingernails, his protruding ribs, the careful way he kept his distance, present but ready to flee if needed. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said, her voice stronger now. "What's your name?" "Ethan, ma'am." He fidgeted with his torn shirt, eyes downcast. "Where are your parents?" His thin shoulders lifted in a small shrug. "Don't have any. Never did." Angela's heart clenched. "You're alone out here?" Ethan nodded, still avoiding her gaze. "I sleep by the church on 5th Street. The pastor lets me stay in the doorway when it rains. I'm not trouble, ma'am. I didn't want you to be alone on the ground." "How long have you been on the streets?" "I don't remember anywhere else." His voice was matter of fact. "People say someone left me by the church when I was little. I've been here since." Angela struggled to sit up, and Ethan immediately helped, his small hands surprisingly steady. Once she was settled against the building wall, she really looked at him, this abandoned child who still had kindness in his heart. "Are you hungry, Ethan?" His eyes flickered toward her bag before quickly looking away. "I'm okay, ma'am." But Angela saw the desperate hunger behind his politeness. She reached for her bag, then remembered she had nothing. She'd given her lunch to a coworker. Ethan watched her with knowing eyes. Then hesitantly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something wrapped in newspaper, a small bread roll, slightly stale. "I have this," he said quietly, his voice barely audible. "We could share?" Angela stared at the tiny piece of bread. It was barely enough for a child his size. "Ethan, that's yours. You need it. You helped me once." He still wouldn't meet her eyes. "Last month you gave me $1 by the bus stop. You smiled at me. Most people don't see me at all." Angela remembered, a small boy sitting quietly while the world rushed past. She'd given him her only $1 without thinking. "You remembered that?" "Yes, ma'am." Ethan carefully broke the bread in half, his thin fingers trembling. "You were kind, so we should share. That's what people do, right?" Tears burned Angela's eyes. This child, starving and forgotten, wanted to share his only meal with her. When had anyone shown her such pure kindness? "Okay, baby," she whispered. "We'll share." They sat together on that hot sidewalk, two invisible people breaking bread while the city rushed past, unseeing. As they ate, Ethan spoke in quiet fragments, about sleeping in doorways, being chased by shopkeepers who called him street trash, learning to read from discarded newspapers. About yesterday when a man had kicked him for loitering. "Don't you have anyone?" Angela asked gently. "Any family?" Ethan shook his head. "Just me. But I'm okay. I know how to find food in dumpsters. Restaurants throw away so much." and I can read pretty well now." The pride in his voice shattered her heart. "Sometimes," he continued, even quieter, "I pretend I have a mama, someone waiting for me somewhere." He stopped, looking embarrassed. "Sorry, that's silly." "No, baby, it's not silly." Angela slowly reached out and touched his shoulder. "Everyone deserves that. Everyone deserves to be loved." Ethan looked up at her then, and Angela saw desperate hope break through his careful guard. "Ethan," she said firmly, "would you like to come home with me?" The boy's eyes went wide. "Home, with you? You need a real meal, a bath, a bed. Come home with me." "But you don't know me. People say kids like me are trouble." Angela cupped his thin face in her hands. "You gave water to a stranger. You shared your only food. That tells me who you are. You really mean it." "I really mean it." Angela stood, her legs still shaky, but her resolve iron solid. "Come on, baby. Let's go home." She held out her hand. Ethan stared at it, disbelieving, then slowly placed his small dirty hand in hers. They walked down Henderson Street together, a black woman worn by life and a white child forgotten by the world. And Angela knew this moment would change everything. What she didn't know was how much it would cost her. The Johnson house sat in a deteriorating neighborhood, a small structure with peeling paint and a sagging porch. To Ethan, it looked like a palace. Angela paused at the door. "My husband might not understand at first, and his mother lives with us. But don't worry, I'll handle it." Ethan nodded, already making himself smaller. The moment the door opened, a voice bellowed, "About damn time, where the hell have you been?" David Johnson stood in the living room, a big thick-armed man, with a face flushed red from alcohol. His eyes fixed on Angela, then slid to Ethan with pure disgust. "What the hell is that?" "David, this is Ethan. He needs help. You brought some street rat into my house." David's voice rose threatening. "You think we're running a damn charity? He's a child who's hungry and alone. I don't give a damn." David moved closer, and Ethan smelled the beer, saw the violence simmering in his eyes. "We can barely feed ourselves and you drag home some filthy." "David, watch your mouth." Angela stepped between them, shielding Ethan. A thin, sharp-featured woman emerged from the back. Ruth Johnson, David's mother. She looked Ethan up and down like he was garbage. "Angela, have you lost your mind?" Ruth's voice was acid. "This creature probably has lice. Diseases. You can't possibly expect us to." "I expect we'll show some compassion," Angela said steadily. "Compassion?" Ruth's laugh was cruel. "Bringing filth into our home. My son works hard while your son hasn't worked in 3 months," Angela said quietly. Silence. David's face turned dangerous. "What did you say?" Before Angela could answer, his hand cracked across her face. The slap echoed through the room. Ethan flinched, watching Angela stumble, her hand flying to her reddening cheek. "Don't you ever disrespect me in my house," David snarled. "Especially not in front of street trash." Angela's eyes watered, but she stood firm. "Ethan stays, tonight at least." "The hell he does." David grabbed her arm, fingers digging in. "Get that thing out of my house right now." "Then what?" Angela pulled free, though it clearly hurt. "You'll hit me again. In front of a child." Ruth moved beside her son, her face twisted. "You're being hysterical." "David's right. That boy needs to go back where he came from. He has nowhere to go." Angela's voice cracked. "He's 9 years old." David's eyes narrowed, and Ethan, watching carefully from his corner, saw calculation replace rage. "Fine," David said slowly, a cruel smile forming. "The brat can stay, but it's gonna cost you, what, $300 every month, on top of what you already give me." David crossed his arms. "You want to play mama, you pay for it." Angela went pale. "David, I barely, not my problem. You want him, you pay. Otherwise he's on the street by morning." Ruth nodded approvingly. "That's fair. If Angela wants this indulgence, she should bear the cost." Ethan's chest tightened. He opened his mouth to say he'd leave, but Angela spoke first. "Fine. 300 a month, but he stays permanently, and I adopt him legally." David laughed. "Adopt him? You're insane. Those are my terms. 300 monthly, and Ethan becomes my legal son. Otherwise no deal." David and Ruth exchanged glances, calculating. $300 monthly was substantial. "Deal," David finally said. "Get your paperwork, play house." Just make sure my money shows up on time, or he's gone. Clear, crystal clear. Now get him out of my sight. He stinks up the place. Angela's hand found Ethan's shoulder. Come on, baby, let's get you cleaned up. She led him to a small bathroom and ran a bath. There's soap here. I'll find clean clothes, take your time. I'm sorry, Ethan whispered. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Angela knelt to his level, the red mark vivid on her cheek. This is not your fault, Ethan. None of it. But he hit you because he hit me because that's who he is. Her voice was sad but steady. That has nothing to do with you. After she left, Ethan climbed into the warm water, his first real bath in months. He scrubbed away layers of grime, watching the water turn black. Through the thin walls he heard David and Ruth talking. $300 a month, Ruth said. You can put that toward your debts. As long as she pays, David replied. The moment she's late, the brat's gone. Ethan sank lower in the water, shame and determination warring in his chest. He wouldn't let Angela regret this. He'd be good, helpful, invisible when needed. When he emerged clean, Angela waited with oversized but clean clothes. She led him to the kitchen where she'd prepared eggs, toast and beans. Ethan stared at the full plate. This is for me, eat baby, you need strength. He ate slowly, savoring every bite. Angela watched with joy and heartbreak in her eyes. Tomorrow we'll enroll you in school, she said. You can read a little. I taught myself from newspapers. Then we'll build on that. You're smart, Ethan. You're going to do wonderful things. After dinner, she showed him the spare room, bare except for a mattress and thin blanket. To Ethan it was heaven. I'll get you furniture soon, Angela promised. And books. Would you like books? Yes, ma'am, Ethan whispered. Very much. That night, lying on his mattress, Ethan made a silent vow. He would study hard, be helpful, become worth Angela's sacrifice. Someday, somehow, he would repay her. In her room, Angela counted her meager money. 300 extra monthly meant picking up night shifts. Her body already ached, but when she thought of Ethan's face, that careful hope, she knew she'd work herself to the bone. God's watching, she whispered. Help me keep him safe. Over the following weeks, Angela took Ethan to the local school and enrolled him. The process was simple. The school was underfunded and overcrowded, happy to have any student who showed up. Ethan sat quietly through the intake interview, answered questions politely, and when they tested his reading level, the teacher looked surprised. He's actually quite advanced for someone with no formal education, the teacher told Angela. He'll do well here if he applies himself. And Ethan did apply himself. He devoured every lesson, every book, every opportunity to learn. He was quiet in class, never causing trouble, always observant. Teachers barely noticed him, which was exactly how he wanted it. At home, things settled into a brutal routine. Angela worked double shifts, came home exhausted, and still found time to help Ethan with homework at the kitchen table. David drank and gambled. Ruth criticized everything Angela did. And Ethan learned to make himself invisible, to stay out of David's way, to be grateful for the small mercy of a roof over his head. The promise Angela had made to protect this boy no matter the cost was already taking its toll, but neither of them knew how much worse it would get. 5 years passed like water through clenched fists. Ethan was 14 now, taller but still lean, with eyes that held too much knowledge for his age. Every evening, he and Angela sat at the kitchen table, studying together. She taught him everything she could, and he absorbed it all with fierce intensity. But what Ethan learned most was this: the sound of violence. He learned David's footsteps, heavy and unsteady when drunk, which was most nights. He learned the warning signs, Ruth's voice turning sweet as poison, planting seeds about money or respect or Angela's failures. And he learned what happened when David's rage found its target. It was a Tuesday when Ethan truly understood the cost Angela was paying for him. He'd come home from the library, his sanctuary, to find the house eerily quiet. Then he heard it, a crash from the bedroom, followed by Angela's voice tight with pain. David, please, shut your mouth. Another crash. Ethan crept down the hallway, his heart hammering. Through the cracked door, he saw David towering over Angela, who was on the floor, one hand raised defensively. The money's gone, David shouted, and you expect me to believe you didn't take it? I didn't touch. David's fist came down, connecting with her shoulder. Angela cried out. Ethan's whole body went cold. He wanted to rush in to stop it, but he was 14 and small. David was a grown man, drunk and violent. What could Ethan possibly do? So he stood frozen and useless while the woman who'd saved him got hurt. When David finally stumbled out, Ethan pressed himself against the wall until the front door slammed. Only then did he rush to Angela. She sat on the bed's edge, holding a cloth to her split lip. Her eye was swelling, bruises already forming on her arms. Ethan, her voice was thick. You shouldn't see this, baby. Are you okay? Stupid question, she clearly wasn't. I'm fine, just a rough day, she tried to smile, making her lip bleed more. Don't worry. But Ethan did worry. How could he not? Over the following months he saw the pattern clearly. David's gambling worsened. He'd blow through whatever money Angela gave him, then come home drunk and furious, looking for someone to blame. Ruth would fan the flames with poisonous whispers about how Angela spent too much on that boy, or how she always defended the street rat over her own husband. And Angela would take it. The verbal abuse, the physical violence, the constant degradation. She'd wake with fresh bruises, work her double shift, come home exhausted, and still help Ethan with homework. One evening, after David had shoved Angela so hard she'd fallen against the counter, Ethan found her in the bathroom, dabbing at a cut on her forehead. Why do you stay? He asked quietly from the doorway. Angela looked up, surprised. Ethan, why stay with him when he hurts you like this? She was quiet for a long moment. It's complicated, baby, it's not. Ethan's voice was firmer than he'd ever used with her. He hurts you, because of me, because you're paying for me to be here. This isn't your fault, isn't it? His voice cracked. If I wasn't here you wouldn't need to work so hard. You wouldn't need to give him money. He wouldn't have a reason to. Ethan, listen to me. Angela set down the cloth and took his hands. David would hurt me whether you were here or not. That's who he is. But you're the reason I keep going. You're the light in this dark place. Tears burned in Ethan's eyes. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to study hard, get good grades, go to college somehow. I'm going to become someone who can take care of you. I'm going to get you out of here. Angela pulled him into a hug. Oh baby, you don't have to save me. Yes I do, Ethan whispered against her shoulder. You saved me, it's my turn. From that day forward, Ethan studied with renewed purpose. Late into the night, he pored over books from the library. Not just schoolwork, but books about law, about justice, about how the world worked and how to change it. He read about lawyers who defended the powerless, about cases that changed history, about the difference between what was legal and what was right. He kept a notebook hidden under his mattress, filling it with observations and plans. Someday, he would be strong enough to protect Angela. Someday, he would have the power to stand between her and David's fists. But that day felt impossibly far away. Meanwhile, Angela, seeing Ethan's dedication, his hunger for knowledge, began spending money she didn't have on books for him. A law textbook from a thrift store, a dictionary, notebooks and pencils. Every dollar she spent on Ethan was a dollar she couldn't give David, and she knew it. She didn't care. If Ethan wanted to learn, she would move heaven and earth to help him. It was this, Angela buying Ethan a stack of used books from a library sale, that finally pushed David over the edge. One Saturday afternoon, Ethan came home with Angela carrying a bag of books. David was in the living room with Ruth, and the moment he saw the bag, his face darkened. What's that? He demanded. Books for Ethan, Angela said carefully. From the library sale. They were only what? David stood, his bulk intimidating. Only money. Money that should be going to me. They were $2 each, David. Hardly. David's voice rose. You're spending my money on books for that street rat, while I'm drowning in debt. Ruth chimed in from her chair, her voice dripping venom. See David. I told you, she cares more about that boy than about you, than about this family. I work for this money, Angela said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. I have a right to, you have a right to nothing. David grabbed the bag from her hands and dumped the books onto the floor. These are going back. And from now on, every cent you make comes to me. Every single cent. Ethan, standing in the doorway, felt something crack inside him. Those are mine. She bought them for me. David's head whipped toward him, eyes blazing. You don't get to talk in my house, boy. You're here because I allow it. Because your precious mama pays me to put up with you. David, Angela stepped between them. Leave him alone. This is between you and me. Oh, it's between us all right. David's eyes gleamed with cruel calculation. In fact, I've been thinking, 300 a month isn't enough anymore. Inflation, you know, cost of living. I want 500 now. Angela's face went pale. David, that's impossible. I can't. Then maybe it's time the boy goes back where he came from. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. You can't, Angela whispered. We have an agreement. The adoption papers. Adoption papers mean nothing if you're not holding up your end. David moved closer, his voice low and menacing. Here's the new deal. 500 a month, or the kid's gone. You've got until the end of the month to decide. Ruth nodded approvingly. Finally some sense. That boy's been nothing but a drain on this family. Ethan watched Angela's face crumble. Watched her calculate numbers that wouldn't add up no matter how hard she tried. 500 monthly on top of everything else. It was impossible. Please, Angela's voice broke. David, please don't do this. He's my son. I love him. Then find the money. David's voice was final. He looked at Ethan with undisguised hatred. You've got 3 weeks, boy. Enjoy them. The days that followed were torture. Angela picked up every extra shift she could. Worked until she collapsed from exhaustion. Ethan watched her wither. Watched the life drain from her eyes, and felt his helplessness like a knife in his chest. 2.5 weeks later, Angela came home early from work, something that never happened. Her face was gray. Her hands shaking. She found Ethan doing homework at the kitchen table and sat down heavily across from him. Baby, she said, her voice hollow. We need to talk. Ethan already knew. He'd seen this coming. I have to leave. Not leave. Just for a little while. Tears streamed down Angela's face. There's a youth center across town. It's safe, clean. They have counselors, educational programs. You'd be taken care of. But not by you. Oh baby. Angela reached across the table, taking his hands. I can't keep doing this. If I keep working like this, I'm going to die. And David, her voice dropped to a whisper. Last night he said if you're still here by month's end he doesn't know what he'll do. He was holding a knife when he said it. Ethan, he wasn't just talking about making you leave. Fear iced through Ethan's veins. He threatened to hurt me. He didn't say it directly, but I saw it in his eyes. He's desperate, deep in debt to dangerous people, and he blames you for everything. Angela squeezed his hands. I can't let him hurt you. I can't, even if it means we have to be apart for a while. How long is a while? I don't know. Until I save enough to get us our own place. Until David, until things change. She was lying and they both knew it. Things wouldn't change. They'd only get worse. The next morning Angela packed Ethan's meager belongings into a garbage bag. She drove him across town to the Riverside Youth Center, a clean, well-maintained facility run by a church organization. They sat in her car outside for a long moment, neither wanting to let go. I'll visit, Angela promised, tears streaming down her face. Every week, every single week, I promise. It's okay, Mom. Ethan used the name deliberately, a gift to her. I'll be fine, and I meant what I said. I'm going to study hard. I'm going to become someone who can help you. I'm going to get us out of this. You already make me proud. Angela pulled him into a fierce hug. Every single day you make me proud. They held each other, neither wanting to be the first to let go. Finally Angela pulled back, cupping his face in her hands. Remember, you're smart, you're kind, you're worth everything. Don't let anyone tell you different. I won't forget, Ethan whispered. I promise I'll make you proud. He walked into the center with his garbage bag of belongings, turning once to wave at Angela still sitting in her car weeping. For the first few months, Angela kept her promise. Every Sunday she visited without fail. They'd sit in the center's common room and talk about his week, his studies, his dreams. Angela would bring him small gifts, books, snacks, hope, but then the factory changed ownership. New management meant new schedules. Angela's Sundays became mandatory workdays. She tried coming Saturdays, but David watched her every move now, suspicious and controlling. Then came the letter that shattered what remained of Angela's heart. The youth center was relocating. The church had lost its local funding, but found a new sponsor 300 miles away. They'd be moving within the month. Angela frantically tried to get the new address to make arrangements to stay in contact. but by the time she scraped together bus fare and got a day off, the old center was already closed. A sign on the door listed a phone number that went to a voicemail box always full. She'd lost him. Angela sat on the steps of the abandoned center and wept until she had no tears left. The boy who'd saved her life with a bottle of water and half a sandwich, the son of her heart, gone. God's watching, baby, she whispered to the empty air. Wherever you are, God's watching. I'm not giving up. Someday I'll find you again. 300 miles away, Ethan sat in his new room at the new facility, holding the photograph he'd managed to keep of Angela, the only one he had. His jaw was set with determination. He pulled out his hidden notebook and wrote, "I will find her again. I will become strong enough to protect her. I will save her the way she saved me." The seed Angela had planted 5 years ago was taking root. In 10 more years it would grow into something powerful enough to save her life. But first both of them would have to survive a decade of hell. The new Riverside Youth Center sat on the edge of Millbrook, a small town hours from where Angela still searched for him. It was larger than the old facility, cleaner with actual classrooms and a library that made Ethan's heart soar. He threw himself into learning like his life depended on it, because it did. Mrs. Patterson, the center's director, noticed immediately. "You read at a college level," she said one afternoon, watching 14-year-old Ethan work through a legal philosophy text. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" "A lawyer," Ethan answered without hesitation, his voice quiet but firm. "I want to help people who can't help themselves." "That's ambitious," Mrs. Patterson smiled. "Also difficult." "I'm not afraid of hard work." Ethan looked up from his book, his eyes intense. "Someone once worked 3 jobs for me. I owe it to her to work just as hard." Over the next decade, Ethan built himself into the person he'd promised Angela he would become. While other kids played video games, he studied case law. While they watched TV, he read legal briefs. He volunteered at the local courthouse, running errands for lawyers, watching trials, absorbing everything. The other residents called him the robot, always working, never socializing. They didn't understand that every book he read, every case he studied, every A he earned was for her, for Angela, for the woman who'd seen him as human when the world saw only trash. He kept her photograph taped inside his locker door. When doubts crept in late at night, when becoming a lawyer seemed impossible for a kid with no money, no connections, no family, he'd look at her face and remember her words, "You're smart, you're kind, you're worth everything." By 18, Ethan had earned a full scholarship to State University through sheer merit and relentless determination. By 22, he was in law school, working 3 part-time jobs to cover what scholarships didn't. By 24, he'd passed the bar exam on his first attempt and joined a small firm specializing in civil rights and family law. He never stopped looking for Angela. Every database he could access, every public record, every spare moment went into the search. But Angela Johnson in that region, there were dozens, and he had no way of knowing if she'd moved, remarried, or if something worse had happened. Still, Ethan kept searching. He'd learned patience from his years on the street, from watching and waiting for opportunities. He knew that someday, somehow, their paths would cross again. He just prayed he wouldn't be too late. Angela's world, if Ethan's life was an upward climb, Angela's was a slow descent into a nightmare she couldn't escape. Without Ethan to protect, without purpose beyond mere survival, Angela became a ghost. She worked her exhausting shifts, came home to a cold house and a colder husband, and endured Ruth's daily cruelty. The torment was systematic, designed to break her spirit. Scrambled eggs again. Can't you cook anything properly? No wonder David looks elsewhere. The bathroom is filthy. What do you do all day besides waste our money? That dress makes you look cheap. Are you trying to embarrass this family? Every day another cut. Every week, another piece of Angela's self-worth chipped away. David grew worse with each passing year. The gambling debts mounted. He lost jobs regularly. Always someone else's fault. Always another excuse. He drank more, worked less, and took out his failures on Angela. At first just words. Stupid, worthless, ugly, then shoving, grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise, then slapping her when dinner wasn't ready on time. Then worse, Ruth saw everything, and justified it all. You pushed him to that, Angela. If you were a better wife, he wouldn't have to discipline you. Angela stopped wearing short sleeves, stopped making eye contact with neighbors, became smaller and smaller, trying not to give David reasons to rage. When the factory closed, she took a warehouse job for less pay. Her chronic bronchitis from years of poor working conditions never went away. The medication cost money they didn't have, so she went without, her cough worsening every year. On her 50th birthday, Angela looked in the mirror and didn't recognize herself. The vibrant woman who'd rescued a boy from the streets was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out shell who flinched at sudden movements. But in quiet moments, when David passed out drunk and Ruth was occupied, Angela would think about Ethan, wonder if he'd finished school, if he was happy, if he remembered her. She kept his photograph hidden in her purse's lining. The picture showed 15-year-old Ethan smiling at the camera, holding a library book, his eyes bright with hope. "Please be okay," she'd whisper to it. "Please be happy. Please forgive me for losing you." She didn't pray much anymore. "God's watching," she used to say. But if God was watching, why did kindness get punished and cruelty rewarded? Still, on the hardest nights, she'd find herself whispering those old words like a mantra. God's watching, God's watching. It was all that kept her going. Parallel moments. One rainy Tuesday, Ethan sat in a courthouse cafeteria reviewing case files. He was defending a single mother being evicted unfairly, a black woman who reminded him painfully of Angela. "I just wanted a safe place for my kids," the woman had said. "Is that too much to ask?" Ethan thought of Angela teaching him to read at that cramped kitchen table, sacrificing everything. "No ma'am," he'd told his client, "it's not too much, and we're going to make sure you get it." That same Tuesday, Angela stood in the rain outside the warehouse, her shift over, with no umbrella and no bus fare. She walked 3 miles home in the downpour, her shoes soaked through, her lungs burning with each breath. When she arrived home shivering and coughing, Ruth was waiting. "You're dripping all over my clean floor, and you're late. David's been asking for you. He's in one of his moods." Angela climbed the stairs slowly, each step agony. David was in the bedroom, drunk and furious about a lost bet. "Where were you?" he demanded. "Work. I had to stay late to finish." "Liar, you were probably meeting someone." "David, no, I would never." The slap snapped her head sideways. Angela tasted blood. "Don't talk back to me, ever." Angela nodded silently, making herself small and invisible. When David finally passed out, she crept to the bathroom and looked at her reflection. A new bruise was already forming on her cheek. She pulled out Ethan's photograph, worn at the edges from years of handling. "I hope you became everything you wanted to be," she whispered. "I hope you're safe. I hope you're happy, baby." 300 miles away, Ethan looked at Angela's photo on his phone. He'd scanned and digitized the original, and made his nightly promise. "I'm coming for you, Mom. I don't know when or how, but I'm coming. I won't let you down." Neither of them knew their reunion was closer than they imagined, and that it would come at Angela's darkest moment. 10 years after their separation, Angela's life reached its breaking point on a sweltering August night. She was 51 now, looking closer to 70. Years of abuse, overwork and malnutrition had ravaged her body. Her hands shook constantly. The cough had become something the free clinic couldn't treat without expensive tests she couldn't afford. David had descended completely into gambling addiction. He owed money to dangerous people, the kind who made examples of those who didn't pay. That August evening, Angela came home from her shift to find Ruth in the kitchen, her face pinched with its usual disapproval. "You're late," Ruth said without looking up. "David's been waiting. I'll start dinner." "Don't bother, he already ate at the bar, with money he doesn't have." Ruth's voice dripped with venom. "But that's your fault too, isn't it? If you were a proper wife, maybe he wouldn't need to escape this miserable house." Angela said nothing. "There was never any point. And Mrs. Henderson saw you talking to that man at the bus stop yesterday," Ruth continued. "A married woman chatting with strange men. How does that look?" He asked for directions. "Directions?" Ruth's laugh was like breaking glass. "You're an embarrassment to this family, Angela. To my son. Sometimes I wonder why he even keeps you around." Before Angela could respond, the front door crashed open. David stumbled in, his face wild with panic. Behind him came 3 men, large, dangerous-looking men with cold eyes and cruel mouths. "David," Ruth's voice wavered. "What's happening?" "May, get to your room. Now." David's voice shook. The lead man, built like a mountain with a scar running down his cheek, smiled without warmth. Now David, that's not very friendly. We came all this way to visit. I told you I'll have the money next week, David stammered. Just give me more time. Next week, the scarred man laughed. You said that last month, and the month before. See, my boss thinks maybe you need a reminder about what happens when people don't pay their debts. Angela pressed herself against the wall trying to disappear. Ruth for once had the sense to retreat to her room. Please, David begged, all his swagger gone. I just need a little more time. I've got a job interview. You've had 6 job interviews this year, David. The scarred man moved deeper into the house, his companions following. We've been patient, real patient, but patience has limits. One of the men grabbed a framed photo and smashed it against the floor. Glass exploded across the room. Stop. Angela found her voice. Please, we'll find the money. Just don't. The scarred man's eyes fixed on her like a predator spotting prey. And who's this? The wife. Leave her alone, David said weakly. Leave her alone. The man laughed. David, when you borrow from my boss, your whole family's in it. Your wife, your mama, they're all collateral. He moved toward Angela with deliberate slowness. She could smell cigarettes and violence on him. Pretty thing, even worn down like this, he said, though his eyes held only calculation. I bet we could get something for her. Maybe she could work off your debt. Clubs downtown always need. Don't you touch her. David's voice cracked with fear, not courage. You don't get to make demands. The man didn't even look at him. You're $30,000 in the hole, David. $30,000. The other 2 men began systematically destroying the living room. They overturned furniture, swept dishes from shelves, tore pictures from walls. It was methodical, professional. They'd done this before. Angela stood frozen, watching her already broken life shatter further. Part of her wondered if there was any lower she could sink. Here's what's happening, the scarred man said conversationally. You have 1 week to come up with $5,000. Just $5,000, call it good faith. If we don't get it, we come back. And next time we won't be so polite. He grabbed a lamp and hurled it through the window for emphasis. Glass exploded outward, and David, his voice dropped to something more sinister. Next time we're taking something with us. Maybe the TV, maybe furniture. His eyes slid back to Angela. Maybe the wife. Your choice. The men left as suddenly as they'd arrived, leaving destruction and terror in their wake. For a long moment nobody moved. Then David turned to Angela, and she saw something terrifying in his eyes. Not fear but cold calculation. This is your fault, he said quietly. My fault. Angela couldn't believe what she was hearing. How is your gambling my fault? If you were a proper wife, if you made me feel like a man instead of a failure, maybe I wouldn't need to gamble. His voice rose with each word. You drive me to it. Your nagging, your judgment, your existence. Ruth emerged from her room, and instead of condemning her son's twisted logic, she nodded. He's right, Angela. A good wife supports her husband. You've only brought him down. Angela looked between them. This man who'd promised to love her and this woman who'd spent years tearing her apart, and something inside her cracked. Get out, she whispered. What? David stepped closer, menacing. Get out, Angela screamed, the first time in years she'd raised her voice. Get out, and don't come back. I'm done. Done with your drinking, your gambling, your excuses. Done with both of you. David's hand shot out, striking her across the face so hard she fell to the floor. Pain exploded through her skull, and she tasted blood. Don't you ever speak to me like that. David stood over her, fist raised. You'll stay here and help me pay this debt because you're my wife. You don't get to leave. You're mine. He kicked her in the ribs, not hard enough to break bones but hard enough to make his point clear. Angela curled into a ball among the broken glass and scattered belongings, every part of her body screaming. Through tears she heard David and Ruth talking as if she wasn't there. We need to get $5,000 somehow, Ruth said. She's got some jewelry, my grandmother's ring. We can pawn it. That won't be enough. What about her bank account? Already emptied it last month. Maybe we can sell some of her stuff. They discussed her possessions like she was already dead, like she was just an asset to liquidate. Later that night, after David left for the bar and Ruth went to bed, Angela dragged herself to the bathroom. Her face was swollen, a dark bruise blooming across her cheek. Her ribs ached with every breath. Blood had dried on her lip. She looked at herself in the mirror, really looked, and saw a stranger. When had she become this person? When had she decided this was all she deserved? She thought of Ethan, the boy who'd shared his only meal, who'd wanted to become a lawyer to help people like her. What would he think if he could see her now? The thought made her weep harder than the physical pain. That night, Angela made a decision. She didn't know how yet, but she would leave. She'd start hiding money, a little at a time. She'd find a way out. She pulled out Ethan's worn photograph and whispered, "I'm sorry I wasn't stronger, baby. I'm sorry I let them break me, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try to be the person you thought I was." What Angela didn't know was that in 3 days those men would return, and this time they wouldn't just make threats, but she also didn't know that help was closer than she imagined. 3 days later, Angela was alone. David had disappeared that morning with muttered excuses about handling things. Ruth had gone to her church meeting, likely gathering sympathy about her difficult daughter-in-law. Angela was washing dishes, moving slowly because her ribs still ached, when she heard multiple cars pull up outside. Her blood ran cold. Through the window she saw them, 5 men this time, including the scarred man from before. They weren't hurrying. They knew David wasn't home. They'd been watching, waiting for exactly this moment. Angela's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. Dead. David hadn't paid the bill in months. The front door exploded inward, kicked off its hinges. "Hello again, Angela." The scarred man entered first, his smile friendly and terrifying. "Remember me?" She backed away, her mind racing for escape routes. The back door was too far. Windows were barred. David had installed them years ago, ironically claiming it was for her safety. "Where's David?" the man asked. "I don't know. He left this morning." Her voice shook. That's unfortunate." He nodded to his companions. "I think David's trying to skip out on his debt." "What do we do when people skip out?" "We take collateral," one grinned. Angela pressed herself against the wall. "Please, I don't have anything. I work minimum wage. I can barely." "Oh, we know all about you. Angela Johnson." The scarred man sat down like he owned the place. 51 years old, warehouse worker, no savings, no assets. "You're a nobody, Angela. A ghost." The words struck like physical blows. "But even nobodies can be useful," he continued, standing. "Even if we can't sell you, we can make an example. Send David a message. You understand?" One of the men grabbed her arm, the same arm David grabbed so often it had permanent bruises. Angela tried to pull away, but he was too strong. "Let's start small," the scarred man said. "Maybe a finger, just to show we're serious." Terror unlike anything Angela had ever felt flooded through her. This was it. This was how she died. Alone, forgotten, payment for someone else's sins. She thought of Ethan one last time, hoped he was happy wherever he was, hoped he'd forgotten the broken woman who'd failed even to protect herself. The man holding her twisted her arm behind her back. She cried out in pain. "Shut her up," the scarred man ordered. A hand clamped over her mouth. Another man pulled out a knife, its blade catching the light. This was happening. This was really. The screech of tires outside. Everyone froze. A car door slammed. Running footsteps. Then a voice Angela hadn't heard in 10 years but would have recognized anywhere. "Let her go, right now." Ethan stood in the broken doorway. He was 24 now, tall and sharp in a dark suit, his face carved with intelligence and cold fury. His phone was in his hand, already recording. "I have 911 on the line, and this footage is uploading to cloud storage," he said, his voice deadly calm. "I'm an attorney, and I'm currently witnessing assault, breaking and entering, and attempted grievous bodily harm. Police are already en route. If you touch her again, I will personally ensure each of you spends the next 20 years in prison." The scarred man laughed, but it sounded forced. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm her son." Ethan's eyes never left Angela. "And you just made the worst mistake of your life." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The scarred man's face hardened. "This isn't over. David still owes. David's debts are not her legal responsibility. I'll be filing papers to separate all marital assets and liabilities as of today." Ethan's voice was steel. "If you or anyone you work for comes near her again, I'll file a civil suit that ties up your boss's assets for years. I'll subpoena every financial record. I'll make your organization's life hell in ways you can't imagine. Are we clear?" The men looked at each other. The sirens were very close now. "Let's go." The scarred man finally growled. They released Angela, who collapsed to the floor. As they filed out, the scarred man paused. "This isn't over, lawyer boy." "Yes," Ethan said quietly. It is. The moment they were gone, Ethan was at Angela's side, his professional composure shattering. Mom, can you hear me? Are you okay? Angela looked up at him through tears and pain and disbelief. Ethan? How did you? I found you. I find you. His hands shook as he helped her sit up, careful of her injuries. I've been looking for 10 years. I'm so sorry it took so long. Police cars screeched to a halt outside. Officers poured in, paramedics following. Suddenly the house was full of people taking statements, checking Angela's vitals, photographing evidence. Through it all, Ethan stayed at her side, holding her hand, his presence solid and real. As paramedics loaded Angela into an ambulance, Ethan climbed in beside her. How? She whispered. How did you find me? I never stopped looking. Ethan's voice cracked. Every database, every public record. Then 2 days ago I was reviewing police reports for a case and saw David Johnson's name, a neighbor's noise complaint. I recognized the address from old documents. I got here as fast as I could, but I should have been faster. I should have. You saved me, Angela breathed. After everything, you came back. Of course I came back. Ethan squeezed her hand, tears streaming down his face. You saved me when I was nobody. Did you really think I'd forget? Did you think I wouldn't search every corner of the world to find you? Angela closed her eyes, tears of relief streaming. For the first time in 10 years they weren't tears of pain or despair. They were tears of hope, of coming home. God's watching, she whispered. Ethan smiled through his tears. Yes, Mom, he is, and he brought us back together. In the ambulance, Ethan made a phone call to a colleague, Marcus, a private investigator he trusted. Marcus, it's Ethan Wright. I need you to dig up everything on David Johnson. Every debt, every illegal activity, every skeleton in his closet. He paused, listening, his eyes on Angela. Because he hurt my mother, and nobody hurts my mother, and gets away with it. Angela drifted in and out of consciousness, but even through her haze, she understood. The boy she'd saved with water and bread had become her protector. The seed she'd planted 15 years ago had bloomed into her salvation. The circle was complete, but the story wasn't over yet. Justice still needed to be served. Angela spent 4 days in the hospital recovering from her injuries, 3 cracked ribs, severe bruising, dehydration and malnutrition. Ethan never left her side except to shower and change clothes at a nearby hotel. On the 3rd day, as Angela sat propped up in bed eating real food for the first time in weeks, Ethan laid out his plan. I've been gathering evidence, he said, spreading documents across her bedside table. David's gambling debts, his history of domestic violence, the assault 3 days ago, his financial abuse. I found hospital records from when you claimed you fell downstairs. Ruth's complicity in the abuse, his failure to pay household bills while gambling away thousands. Angela looked at the papers, fear and hope warring in her chest. What are you saying? I'm saying we're taking him to court. Divorce, protective order, criminal charges for assault and battery. Possibly fraud and theft for unauthorized use of your accounts. Ethan, honey, this will cost. I'm your lawyer, pro bono. Ethan smiled. This is what I do, Mom. I help people who can't help themselves. People the system failed. This is literally my job. But why? Angela's voice cracked. After I lost you, after I failed to protect you, why would you? Ethan moved closer, taking her hand. You didn't fail me, Mom. You gave me everything. You saw me when I was invisible. You fed me when I was starving. You fought for me when your own husband wanted me gone. You worked 3 jobs to give me a chance. He pulled something from his pocket, worn wax paper in a plastic sleeve. Do you remember this? Angela's hand flew to her mouth. The bread, from the day we met. I've kept it all this time. Every time law school got hard, every time I wanted to quit, I'd look at this and remember a woman gave me everything when she had nothing. She believed I was worth saving. How could I be any less than the man she believed I could be? Angela wept openly. I'm so proud of you, baby. Then let me do this. Let me fight for you the way you fought for me. His voice was fierce. David needs to answer for what he's done, not just to you but to prevent him from hurting anyone else. We stop him here, now. Angela thought about the years of abuse, the fear, the humiliation, about David's fists and Ruth's venom, about dying alone in that house, forgotten. Then she looked at Ethan, her boy, her son, living proof that kindness could change the world. Okay, she said. Let's do it. 6 weeks later, they sat in a courtroom packed with spectators. Ethan had built an airtight case. He'd interviewed neighbors who'd heard the fights, subpoenaed medical records showing a pattern of injuries, gotten testimony from Angela's warehouse supervisor about hidden bruises, tracked David's gambling debts, his unreported income, his tax evasion. By the time Ethan was finished, David faced not just assault charges but fraud, theft, and financial abuse. David sat at the defendant's table in Prison Orange with his overworked public defender, looking smaller than Angela remembered. His face was gaunt, his swagger gone. Ruth sat in the gallery, her face pinched with fury. She'd tried to approach Angela before trial, but Ethan had stepped between them like a wall. "You don't speak to her," he'd said quietly. "Not now, not ever." As the judge entered, Angela felt Ethan's hand steady on her shoulder. The prosecutor, Sarah Chen, who Ethan had worked with before, presented the case methodically. Photos of Angela's injuries, medical records spanning years, neighbor testimony about screams and violence. "Mr. Johnson," she said in her opening statement, subjected his wife to over a decade of systematic torture, physical violence, financial control, psychological abuse. He used her as his personal ATM while gambling away thousands. When she tried to stand up for herself, he beat her so severely she required hospitalization. David's lawyer tried to argue self-defense, tried to paint Angela as an aggressor, tried to suggest exaggeration for financial gain. Then Ethan took the stand, not as Angela's lawyer but as a character witness. Sarah Chen asked him to explain his relationship to Angela. The crowded courtroom fell silent as Ethan told the story. A 9-year-old homeless boy, a woman who collapsed on the street, water and bread shared in kindness. "She didn't know me," Ethan said, his voice clear and unwavering. "She had every reason to walk past like everyone else, but she didn't. She saw me as human. She took me home, fought her husband to keep me there, worked herself to exhaustion to give me a chance at life." He looked directly at David. "And when David Johnson threatened me, when he made clear he'd hurt me if I stayed, Angela made the hardest choice of her life. She sent me away to keep me safe, even though it broke her heart. That's who Angela Johnson is. That's the kind of person she is." The courtroom was absolutely still. "And David Johnson?" Sarah asked. "What kind of person is he?" "The kind who sees kindness as weakness, who uses fear as control, who breaks things instead of building them." Ethan's voice never wavered, "the kind who absolutely deserves to be held accountable for his actions." During cross-examination, David's lawyer tried to rattle him. "Isn't it true you resent my client for sending you away, that this is revenge?" "No," Ethan said simply, "this is about justice. There's a difference. You expect this court to believe you harbor no ill will after 15 years. I expect this court to look at the evidence objectively." Ethan met the lawyer's eyes. "My personal feelings are irrelevant. The facts speak for themselves. David Johnson is a violent man who terrorized his wife for years. That's not opinion. That's documented truth." When Angela took the stand, Ethan guided her through testimony gently, professionally. She spoke about years of abuse, broken promises, stolen money, constant fear. "Why didn't you leave?" David's lawyer demanded during cross-examination, his tone accusatory. Angela looked at him, then at the jury. "Because he convinced me I deserved it. Because he said no one would believe me. Because he told me I was worthless without him." Her voice grew stronger. "After years of hearing you're nothing, you start to believe it." She paused, finding strength. "But I was wrong. I'm not worthless. I'm a survivor. I'm here today because someone I loved came back for me, the same way I came back for him 15 years ago when he needed me." The trial lasted 4 days. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood. "We find the defendant, David Johnson, guilty on all counts." The courtroom erupted. Ruth screamed from the gallery. David's head dropped. Angela felt Ethan's arm around her shoulders, holding her as she wept with relief. 2 weeks later they returned for sentencing. Judge Patricia Williams, a black woman in her 60s with no tolerance for domestic violence, looked over her glasses at David with cold contempt. "Mr. Johnson, I've reviewed this case extensively. The photos, the testimony, the financial records, the pattern of violence spanning over a decade." David kept his eyes down. "What troubles me most is not just what you did, but your complete lack of remorse." Even during allocution, your attorney spent more time making excuses than accepting responsibility. She leaned forward. Domestic violence is not a momentary lapse. It is a sustained campaign of terror against someone who trusted you, someone who deserved your protection, not your cruelty. The prosecutor had recommended 8 years. Defense asked for 3 with probation. I sentence you to 12 years in state prison, Judge Williams declared. Gasps filled the courtroom. David's knees buckled. Ruth screamed. Furthermore, the judge continued, you will pay restitution to Mrs. Johnson in the amount of $150,000 for medical expenses, lost wages and pain and suffering. Upon release you are permanently prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Mrs. Johnson or any member of her family. This sentence sends a message: abuse will not be tolerated. Officers, remove the defendant. As they led David away in handcuffs, he looked back at Angela one last time, not with anger but with something that might have been regret. Too little, too late. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Ethan stood at the microphones, Angela beside him. Today justice was served, he said, but this isn't about one case. This is about a system that too often allows abuse to continue behind closed doors. This is about teaching people that domestic violence is a crime, not a private family matter. A reporter called out, Mr. Wright, you have a personal connection to the victim. Ethan looked at Angela, who nodded. Angela Johnson saved my life when I was 9 years old and homeless. She gave me food, shelter and hope when I had nothing. When I found out she was in danger, I did what she would have done. I came back. He took Angela's hand. She's not just my client, she's my mother. And I want everyone to understand kindness matters. The compassion you show strangers matters. Angela showed me kindness 15 years ago, and that changed everything. My world, her world, and hopefully the world for every abuse victim watching, who realizes they deserve better. Another reporter, Mrs. Johnson, what's your message to other survivors? Angela stepped to the microphone, her voice shaking but determined. You are not alone. You are not worthless. You deserve safety and respect and love. If nobody else tells you that today, I'm telling you, you matter. Your life matters. Don't give up. There is hope even when it feels impossible. Cameras flashed. Somewhere out there, other women in other houses watching the news felt a spark of hope kindle in their darkness. That evening, Ethan took Angela to his apartment, small but clean in a safe neighborhood. He'd already set up a sofa bed, stocked the fridge, made space for her to heal. This is yours as long as you need it, he said. And I'm looking at houses for us. 2 bedrooms, a yard, maybe space for a garden. Would you like that? Angela looked around at the framed law degree, the neatly organized books, the enlarged photos of the 2 of them hung with care. I'd like that very much, she whispered. But Ethan, you don't have to. Yes, I do. He sat beside her. Mom, you gave me family when I had none. You gave me love when the world showed cruelty. Let me give that back. Let me take care of you the way you took care of me. Angela pulled him into a fierce hug. I love you, baby. I'm sorry for all those lost years. We didn't lose them. Ethan said softly. We spent them becoming the people who could find each other again. Those years made me a lawyer, made me someone who could fight for you. Maybe that was the point all along. As they sat together in the quiet apartment, Angela thought about the winding road from Henderson Street to this moment, from collapse on hot pavement to justice finally served. God's watching, she whispered. Ethan smiled. Yes, Mom, and I think he's smiling. Prison was exactly as harsh as David had feared. The other inmates didn't look kindly on men who beat women. Word spread quickly about why he was there. It always did. David spent most of his time in protective custody, isolated and alone, watching his life waste away through bars. He wrote Angela letters at first, angry ones blaming her for everything, then pleading ones asking for forgiveness, then bitter ones cursing the day they'd met. Angela never opened them. Ethan collected and filed them as evidence should David ever violate the protective order, but Angela never wanted to read his words again. What he has to say doesn't matter anymore, she told Ethan. He had 15 years to be different. I'm done giving him space in my head. 7 years into his sentence, David had a massive stroke. The prison medical system being what it was, treatment was minimal. He survived but with severe impairment, partial paralysis, difficulty speaking, confined to a wheelchair. After serving 10 years with time off for good behavior, he was released to a state facility for disabled ex-convicts. He spent his final years in that wheelchair, staring at a TV he could barely comprehend, a broken man destroyed by his own cruelty. He died alone 2 years later. A prison chaplain and a social worker attended his funeral. No one else came. Angela heard about his death through Marcus, Ethan's investigator who'd kept tabs on David as a safety precaution. "How do you feel?" Ethan asked gently. Angela was quiet for a long moment. Sad. Not for him, exactly, but for what could have been. If he'd chosen differently, if he'd been kinder, we could have had a good life. But he chose cruelty, and cruelty destroyed him. She looked at Ethan. But from that darkness came something beautiful. Came you. Came our family. So maybe even tragedy can lead to grace. Ethan squeezed her hand. "That's the difference between you and them, Mom. You chose to let kindness define you. They chose bitterness. Look where we all ended up." Ruth's fall was slower but equally complete. After the trial, her carefully constructed social world collapsed. The church congregation who'd followed the case through local news started asking uncomfortable questions. How had Ruth lived in that house and done nothing? How had she participated in Angela's torment? The ladies who'd brought casseroles found excuses not to visit. The prayer circle disbanded. Invitations to church events stopped coming. One Sunday Ruth arrived at church to find her usual pew occupied. When she tried joining fellowship hour, conversations died when she approached. Women who'd once valued her opinions now turned away. "Can you believe she just sat there while he beat that poor woman?" Someone whispered loud enough for Ruth to hear. "And she was cruel to Angela too, from what I heard. Called her terrible names. They say she tried to convince Angela not to press charges, wanted to protect her son even after everything." Ruth stood alone in the church basement, holding lukewarm coffee, realizing she'd become invisible. Worse, she'd become a cautionary tale. The final blow came when the church board asked her to step down from the women's auxiliary. "We feel it's best, given the circumstances," Pastor Reynolds said firmly but gently. "The church needs to take a strong stance against domestic violence. Your association with the situation makes that difficult." Ruth tried to argue about family loyalty, about biblical duty to her son. Pastor Reynolds shook his head. "Mrs. Johnson, there's a difference between loyalty and complicity. You crossed that line." Within 6 months, Ruth had moved from the house, now Angela's property by court order, into a small studio apartment across town. She'd lost her social standing, her church community, her sense of purpose. She spent her days alone, nursing grievances and watching soap operas. Sometimes she'd walk past the old house, now renovated and bright, with flowers in the yard, and feel something that might have been regret. But Ruth was too proud to admit fault, too bitter to change. She died 3 years after David, alone in that studio apartment. The funeral was small, just a handful of church members who came from obligation. Angela sent flowers but didn't attend. "I forgive her," Angela told Ethan when they heard. "But I don't need to pretend she was someone she wasn't. She made her choices. She lived with the consequences." The fall of David and Ruth became a cautionary tale throughout the community. People whispered about them, about how pride and cruelty had led to destruction, how a man who'd had everything lost it all through his own choices. But more importantly, other women started coming forward. Women who'd been in situations like Angela's, who'd seen the trial coverage and realized they didn't have to live in fear. Ethan's law firm received calls from women seeking help, seeking protection, seeking justice. He took every case he could, building a reputation as someone who fought for the voiceless. When people asked why he cared so much, he'd tell them about a woman who collapsed on Henderson Street, and a homeless boy who shared his only water. "Kindness changes the world," he'd say, "one person at a time," and he meant it. 2 years after the trial, Angela stood in the kitchen of their new home, truly their home, humming softly as she prepared Sunday dinner. The house was modest but perfect, 3 bedrooms, a small yard with a flourishing garden where Angela grew tomatoes and herbs, and a front porch with rocking chairs where she and Ethan spent summer evenings talking. The kitchen was Angela's favorite room, painted warm yellow that caught afternoon sun. She'd chosen every detail, curtains, dishes, the small herb garden on the windowsill. It was hers, truly hers. At 53, Angela looked a decade younger than she had at 51. Her eyes were clear, her smile genuine. she'd gained back healthy weight. Her hands were steady, the chronic cough was gone. Treated by doctors Ethan's insurance covered. She wore her hair natural in short silver-streaked curls, and she liked what she saw in mirrors now. She looked like herself, maybe for the first time ever. "Mom," Ethan called from the living room. "Can I invite Marcus for dinner? He's nearby." "Of course, baby, there's plenty." Angela checked the pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans. "Set another place." She heard Ethan laugh on the phone, a sound that filled her heart with joy. This house had laughter, warmth, love. Minutes later the front door opened. Multiple voices, not just Marcus. Angela walked to the living room and stopped, her hand flying to her mouth. The room was full, colleagues from Ethan's firm, neighbors, women from Angela's support group. In the center stood Ethan, holding a cake with candles. "Happy birthday, Mom." Angela had forgotten her own birthday. For so many years it had passed unmarked. David never remembered. Ruth had used it to criticize how Angela was getting old and useless. But here were people who actually cared, singing and smiling, celebrating her existence. After she blew out candles, someone asked, "What did you wish for?" Angela looked around, at these people who'd become family, at the home she'd helped create, at Ethan who'd grown into the finest man she'd ever known. "Nothing," she said through happy tears. "I have everything I need right here." The afternoon filled with food and laughter and stories. Marcus told how Ethan had once stayed up 48 hours preparing for a trial defending a single mother. Colleagues shared how Ethan fought like every client was the most important person alive. "He never quits," the colleague said. "When Ethan Wright takes your case, he fights like you're the most important person in the world." Angela caught Ethan's eye across the room and smiled. "I wonder where he learned that." As sunset painted the sky and guests began leaving, Angela and Ethan found themselves alone on the front porch, rocking in their chairs. "Thank you for today," Angela said. "It was perfect. You deserve perfect, Mom." Ethan pulled out a folded document from his pocket. "I wanted to give you this, but I wanted it to be just us." Angela unfolded it, gasped. "Official adoption papers." "Adult adoption," Ethan explained, voice thick, "makes it legal. You've been my mother 26 years. Now it's on paper. You're Angela Wright if you want. You're my family, forever." Tears streamed down Angela's face. "Angela Wright, I like that very much." "Me too, Mom." They sat watching the neighborhood settle, kids playing, couples walking dogs, peaceful evening life. "I've been thinking," Angela said. "Starting a foundation for women leaving abuse. Resources I didn't have, legal help, housing, counseling." Ethan's face lit up. "Wonderful idea. I'll handle legal work pro bono. My firm has donors. What would you call it?" "Second chances." "That's what we both got." "Perfect." Over the next year they built it together. Ethan handled incorporation. Angela used her settlement as seed funding. They found volunteers and office space. Second chances helped 12 women the first year. 47 the second. Women needing lawyers, housing, belief. Angela worked there 3 days weekly, tending her garden and volunteering at the youth shelter the rest. She told kids there, "You matter, your life has value. Don't let anyone tell you different." A girl asked one day, "How do you stay happy after everything bad?" Angela thought about abuse, pain, fear, losing and finding Ethan. "Happiness is a choice. You can't choose what happens. But you choose what you do with it, bitterness or better." "I chose better." "Was it hard?" "The hardest thing ever," Angela admitted. "Some days I struggle, some nights nightmares. But I wake up safe and loved and remember I survived. I won. I built a new life. That's everything." 5 years after the trial, on a crisp October morning, they stood in a courtroom again, filled only with joy. Ethan was being sworn in as a judge. At 36, one of the youngest ever appointed to family court. His fairness, dedication to the vulnerable, understanding of system failures made him unanimous choice. Angela sat front row in purple, smiling brilliantly. As Ethan raised his right hand, swearing to uphold justice, Angela thought about the journey. A boy with dirty feet and warm water, a boy who shared his only bread, a boy the world discarded. Now a judge, protecting children like he'd been, helping women like she'd been. Dispensing justice with wisdom and mercy, the circle expanding outward endlessly. After the ceremony, Reporters swarmed. Ethan pulled Angela forward. My mother, Angela Wright, she's why I'm here. Mrs. Wright, how does it feel seeing your son become a judge? Proud doesn't cover it, Angela said, eyes shining. Grateful, grateful God put us together. Grateful we chose kindness over bitterness. Grateful we're proof beautiful things bloom from darkness. What would you say to people in hard times? Angela thought of trapped women watching. Don't give up. Don't let anyone say you're worthless. You're valuable, precious, deserving love and safety. Be kind even when the world's cruel, that kindness returns. Maybe not right away, not how you expect, but it will. She looked at Ethan with love. 26 years ago, I gave a homeless boy water and bread. Today he's a judge helping others. You never know what one act of kindness changes, whose life you save. Cameras flashed. Somewhere women in darkness felt hope spark. That evening at home, quiet dinner together. Judge Wright, Angela tested. Distinguished. Still surreal, Ethan said. Kids sleeping in doorways thought he'd be lucky to survive. Now a judge, feels like dreaming. Not a dream. What happens when you work hard, stay true? Angela took his hand. Proud of you. Not just judge, but who you are. Could have been bitter, angry. Chose compassion. Chose helping people. That's what makes you special. Learned from the best. Later Angela stood at her window watching moonlit streets. Thought about the journey from Henderson Street. Collapsed on pavement to safe at home. Thought about David dying alone, broken by cruelty. Ruth bitter to lonely end. How different their endings. Not luck but choices. They chose cruelty. She chose kindness. They chose taking. She chose giving. They chose destroying. She chose building. Kindness won. Love won. Justice won. God's watching, she whispered. Not fear but gratitude. Good night, Mom. Love you from down the hall. Love you too, baby. Angela Wright climbed into bed in her safe home, her hard-won life from ashes, and slept deeply, peacefully, nothing to fear, everything for gratitude. The boy who came back saved her. Truth, they saved each other. Together proved one act of kindness. Water, bread, seeing another's humanity, changes the entire world. 10 years later, Second Chances Foundation helped over 800 women escape abuse. Expanded to 5 cities, 3 locations, planning statewide. Judge Ethan Wright, known as one of most compassionate yet fair judges, respected for family court decisions prioritizing the vulnerable. Still took pro bono cases, fought for voiceless. Angela Wright, 63, silver hair, laugh lines, spent days at foundation, tending garden, telling her story everywhere. Spoke at churches, centers, schools, shelters. Told young people about kindness power. Told survivors escape was possible, worth fighting for. Told everyone one compassionate act transforms worlds. One Tuesday, young woman came through foundation doors. Black woman, 20s, hidden bruises, hollow defeated look, Angela remembered from her mirror. Don't know if you can help, the woman whispered, staring down. No money, nowhere safe. Husband will kill me if he knows, but saw you on news once, you said. We mattered, our lives mattered. Needed hearing that again. Someone saying I'm not crazy wanting to leave. Angela stood, took the woman's trembling hands in steady ones. Not crazy, brave, Angela said firmly. Yes, we can help, that's exactly why we're here. Guided woman to chair, sat beside her. Let me tell you a story, Angela said softly. About a boy I met on Henderson Street 26 years ago. How one bottle of water, one piece of bread shared between strangers changed both our lives forever. Taught us kindness is the most powerful force in the universe. As Angela told their story, the woman listened, hope slowly dawning in tired eyes like sunrise after longest night. Angela knew the circle still expanding, rippling outward, proving daily that kindness conquers cruelty, love overcomes hate, broken things become beautiful again. The boy who came back became Judge Ethan Wright, dispensing justice with wisdom and mercy, protecting powerless. The woman who saved him became Angela Wright, beacon of hope for hundreds in darkness, proof survival possible, life after abuse beautiful. Together changing the world, one kindness, one saved life, one second chance at a time. Some stories end. This one kept beginning again, with every person helped, every life touched, every hope sparked. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.